Today, our guest, Jammy Kiggundu.
Good morning.
Welcome. And my fabulous co-host,
Rob Cremoso, or AKA the Count de Monet, but that's another story, another time. We'll get into that. But you probably already know it because I am a little crazy.
Exactly. So I'm the Vintage Contessa, and we are coming to you living the authentic life. And we wanted to get together with amazing, interesting tastemakers, Texans, people from throughout the country that are really making change. And Jamie is one of those amazing people. His commitment, his collaborations, the amount of people that he connects with, it's really been amazing to me. We actually met through mutual friends at a country and western birthday party
Bobby
of all
Brown.
places.
Bobby Brown performance.
But I guess it was a country and western place, but Bobby Brown is not C&W. But it was awesome. And we've talked to him before about bullying. But what's happening in our country this week and what's been happening for many generations is another form of bullying. So we wanted to meet with you today, talk to you a little bit about your journey in life, and really dig into answering the question, how do I know it's real? How do I know friendships are real? How do I know the police force is real? How do I know our community is real? And give some inspiration to people out there who are really searching for help in this journey to understand how that all works.
Well, first and foremost, I'm happy to be here with you, and congrats on the launching of your new platform. This is really exciting.
Thank you, thank you.
And thank you for having me here to share my perspective on various topics. So where would you like to begin?
Could we do a couple minutes of your background?
Yes, tell us about
you
your...
You didn't grow up in Houston, and it'll give us a little bit of a bio.
I should read more of
Okay,
his
then
bio.
tell us a
I'm so
little.
sorry. He is a 2018 lawyer of distinction for excellence in sports and entertainment law. He's a member of the National Black Lawyers Association. He's 2018 Top 100 Lawyers and Houstonia Magazine Top Lawyers Award. He's a 2005 graduate of the University of New Mexico School of Law.
She embarrasses
and
me too when she starts talking.
licensed
It's
to
a little
practice
tough to
in
listen to
Texas.
sometimes.
And then all of these people that you've represented, the New York Knicks, the Denver Nuggets, Akeem Olajuwon, you've worked with the NBA, you've done so many hip-hop magazines, celebrities, fashion shows, and I do have to say, you are so stylish. And that was another reason we wanted you as our guest, because we tend to favor those stylish leaders out there.
Well, I'm blushing, and I'm not sure if my makeup is hiding that fact. But first, I think I need to charge more based on what you've just read.
Exactly.
But so I'll start with the fashion and
Yes.
move in. So my favorite person to buy clothing from is a gentleman named Alex Homer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's my tailor. He's been and now one of my better friends, and so he comes out and he's responsible for making sure that I look professional in different settings and that I'm trendy. So I owe that portion to him, and persons like yourself who I get to learn things about highs and lows. When
Yes,
it comes
mixing
to
high and low, so expensive brands with lower priced items.
Yes.
My Target with my Cartier love bracelet.
And I got to tell you, when I hear the word Target, that makes me very excited. I'm thinking we almost have to get a 1099 from them because we're saving. We're actually making money, not saving money. We're making money when she goes to Target. Well, we don't call it Target. We call it Target.
Target.
Yes,
Target.
but we digress.
And so my journey from New Mexico. So when you're from New Mexico, they always know if you're authentic, because if you can't answer the question red or green, then they know that you're not a homer. And so if you don't know the answer when they say red or green, yeah, you're persona non gratis, non-welcome. But yeah, so my father was a professor when he came to this country from Uganda, and we migrated to different states while he was pursuing different positions within education, academia. He was one of the first African American professors at the University of Auburn, for example. Went to New Mexico, was a athlete there, so he played on the university soccer team. And then my mother, who was Miss Uganda, that's a story for another day.
No
Beautiful
way.
woman.
Oh, I love that.
And super educated as well. Went to the University of New Mexico, and then my uncle came to the country, and he went to the University of New Mexico. So it became a destination point, just like for some of the Italians who ended up in New York, and
Yes.
and historically a lot of persons from one region started tending to go into one area where they had common situations and traits and persons with similar backgrounds. So we're a family that all used New Mexico as our thumbprint for how we came to the United States. I was the firstborn in the United States between my mother and father's marriage. And then we went to Pennsylvania, New York, Alabama, back to New Mexico, and I grew up predominantly in New Mexico. So undergrad, high school, law school, parts of middle school, parts of elementary school, all in New Mexico. And I ended up in Texas because my uncle moved to Texas, and as I was growing up, I would fly back and forth to Houston and just kind of see what was out there. And as soon as I graduated law school, the very next day I was on a plane and ended up here.
Well, and I Googled what you did in college, and it came up that you did the long jump. Were you?
Yes, so I'm a track guy and a basketball guy, but in college, long jump, triple jump, 4x1, 60, open 100, you name it, and I pretty much had the opportunity or at one point was called upon to do it, and competitively. It was fun, and I still get out there and still relive the glory days, running on the track, and have a couple of friends that, along with myself, go out to different schools. So Frank Rutherford is a former Olympian and one of the coaches at the University of Houston, first Bohemian Olympian in the triple jump.
Oh, wow.
Inspired me to get back on the track recently. And from there, Dr. Riahi came out and joined me, and we started getting a large following. Social media influencers, beauty pageants, contestants, housewives, grocery store attendees or clerks, or so many different people, so many different backgrounds, all with the same goal of trying to improve ourselves and exercise for them in a different way than they're used to. So normally, they're used to boot camps where they're lifting weights and they're doing a bunch of things that their body stopped responding. But so the body's an organism that needs change to sometimes show improvement. Well, if you're doing the same routine, so if Rob is bench pressing, for 30 years doing the same thing, at some point he's going to stop seeing the change in his physique. And so we offered an alternative. Say, well, what would happen to your body if I gave you the opportunity to sprint like a deer, for 6 months? And how would that change you? And people became very interested in that. And then we had a lot of fun with it. Started doing, social media posts and various hilarious, cuts and takes of what that day's workouts were. I started inviting some of the most popular trainers in Houston to join us. A guy named John Hooten came out and joined us. Jay Sutaria, who trains Dwight Howard and trains.
That's another athlete today.
I know, I'm shaking my head. I'm like, okay, that's not a fashion designer, so I don't know their name, but
right.
I'm sure it's impressive.
Right. So we had these persons that are professional trainers, well respected in their field, but track is not something that they're accustomed to. Willing to come out and try it, put their bodies through those routines, and take things back that they enjoyed about it and utilize it in their own trainings if they so choose. But it just took off. It became very, very interesting and quite popular group to be a part of. And then of course winter came and nobody wants to run except me. I'm committed to it, right?
Well, winter's not really winter here. Our winter, I say we have 9 months of summer in Houston and 3 months of hell, because it's going to be 98 degrees 4 or 5 days next week, which is to me brutal. And every summer I say, this is the hottest summer we've ever had. And my wife always gives me the look. It's because you grew up north. It's not any different. It's the same.
Right.
And I like your concept of changing and tricking the body, because if you do the same thing over and over and over again without any change, I learned, I ride my bike a lot, and that's my exercise that I really love. I used to lift weights, but I can't any longer because of joints, but that's that's just a part of aging.
Sure.
But I'll sometimes do sprints with my buddies when we ride our bikes. We'll ride mellow, and then we'll sprint as hard as we can for 2 minutes, and then slow down for a minute and sprint and back and forth. And we've learned by doing these certain movements, it's tricked us. We don't sweat as much. We look at what our average speed is when we're riding now, and we're 1 or 2 miles an hour faster. And we really didn't do anything better or different than what we were doing, but our bodies just got better. And we're all in our mid-50s.
Right.
And it's crazy by just changing things up.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and then your body has quick twitch and slow twitch muscle responses, and the muscle fibers fire in different ways depending on how you train. So it makes perfect sense in what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And at some point, if you want to ride your bike down to the track and see us,
I would love to. I'd love to learn to run a little, because as I tell people, I'm built for comfort, not for speed. I'm just a Midwestern farm kid. I'm just a big kid, and I'd love to get a little leaner and see my belt buckle every now and then. It'd be nice versus going like this to look at it. But
you're built for snuggling. He's built for snuggling.
He's a cuddler.
Oh yeah,
my cuddle
I'm
bug.
gonna hear this one later that I'm a cuddler. Okay.
I know. Well, I think that most of the leaders that I've connected with have found a way to take their passion and transition it into business. So I think it's amazing that you have this true love and passion of athleticism and style, and then you found a way to connect with these people through your law practice. But I mean, that's kind of a jump from athleticism to law. How did that evolve?
So being an athlete, I think, prepares you for a couple of things. It prepares you for difficult situations. It prepares you for how to win. It prepares you for how to lose. It gives you a clarity of focus when it comes to having something that you're objectively looking at. You're staring down, whether it's a finish line or championship game or whatever it is. You can focus and commit to a process that gets you to the end result. And for me, once I said, okay, I'm going to be an attorney, that was it. There was no deflection. There was no veering off that course. It was, these are the steps, and this is what I'm going to do. And so I think that was a very easy transition in that sense, to go from the law, from being an athlete to being an attorney. Did I answer the question that you
did. Was there a catalyst that made you want to be an attorney? Was there something that happened that said, oh, I want to fix this, or I want to save these people? Or was it more just that our daughter Bella says she wants to be an attorney, a finance attorney, because she loves arguing about money?
So you get that a lot. People say when they meet somebody that they think loves to argue, they always say, "Oh,
Yes.
You should be a lawyer. You love to argue." Yeah,
and you don't seem argumentative.
I'm not argumentative. I'm a surgeon, more than a time bomb. I don't go in and I precisely cut and remove and move on. But I think people who go into the field of law have one common idea, and it's, I want to fight for, and they pick a cause. I want to fight for the little guy. I want to make this situation right for this particular group or person. I think that we all have that innate in our mind. I had multiple options of career paths. I think most people have multiple interests, right? Rob, your interests probably are vast. and you ended up in one field for one reason or another. But if somebody said, would you also like to do a couple of these other
Pivot.
things?
We've had to pivot in our industry. We're interviewing you, but when I was younger, I was a coin dealer. I made money that. Then we got married, and I was into the jewelry business. And then when she got pregnant, I bought a handbag for her. And we've had to pivot and adapt because the world has changed. And you, on your resume, you seem like you can be an attorney for everything from a sports person to a just cause to this. What was the catalyst that made you, or were you just testing it, and you enjoy it so much and it taxes your brain, it makes you really work harder to know all of it? What's your focus?
So when I first started practicing, I was general counsel for a hospital management firm. And being in that position, I was forced to learn how to acquire ongoing businesses, how to build a business from the ground up, being purchasing land, all of the architecture drawings, reading those contracts, finance, and then you get into employment matters, and then you get into litigious matters, because there's nothing to litigate when you're a brand new entity. But when you have $150 million gross annually, you have 150 million lawsuits.
Yes.
Waiting to happen that you're
Right,
preventing.
because people generally don't sue companies or individuals that have a zero net worth.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So then you start to learn a bit about litigation, and then you start hiring outside firms and monitoring what they're doing, and learning what they do well and what they don't do well. So you become exceptionally exposed to so many different areas of the law when you're in that position, whereas sometimes the traditional path of a lawyer is to go to a firm. If it's a large firm, you may get put into a specific section, and you can become an expert in mergers and acquisitions and never in 25, 30 years see anything to do with litigation, see anything to do with taxation, see anything. But if you the experience that I had was not that. I was birthed into a universe of exploding topics and having to put my fingers on those topics and learn from them. It made me better in my craft as an attorney. From there, I met a bunch of athletes that were retiring, looking for what to do now with the next 45, 50, 60 years.
Right, because retiring for athletes can be 27 to 35 years old. Tom Brady is the only one that's kicking in his mid-40s and still at the top of his game, because it's just not normal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, a professional athlete may have a career span of 2 to 3 years in some fields, and then they have to get a whole new existence, a whole new a way of creating revenue. And so a lot of them were looking for opportunities and making investments in different things, and some of those happened to be healthcare. So some of them ended up approaching the company that I was working with, and having conversation about, can we make an investment in the next upcoming project. And so forming those relationships, having conversations, well, what else are you doing? And then one of my first cases ended up being a case that was covered by Sports Illustrated. I had a client whose financial advisor took him for millions. And I'm in my second year of practicing law, and I have this Sports Illustrated case. And they're and they're looking to me for reprieve. What can we do? How can you help us? And it's like, wait a minute, there's this entire issue of athletes being victimized by financial advisors, or even an uncle who's your manager, and
the parents sometimes even
baseball
crazy.
players whose parents sue the player for compensation because they were on payroll. Then the player fires their parent, and the parent sues for millions. I mean, you've got all these
entertainers. Look at Britney Spears.
Right.
I mean, that whole craziness there of her family taking over her whole estate. But the whole entertainment and sporting industry, so young, they make so much money so fast, and they don't think it'll ever end. And It does.
It does. It does end, and there's some misconceptions about being an athlete or an entertainer as well. They begin practicing their profession at like 3 or 4 years old. Most of us, when we get into college or trade school,
Yes.
we're 20,
They're
18,
15, 20 years ahead of us.
Absolutely. And so that's why, when they retire early, then they have to step back and go into a new world that they have no experience in. And unfortunately, that leaves them as victims. And the same thing actually happens to doctors, believe it or not. Doctors
Yes,
are
because
probably
they're not.
Right.
They don't have that. We interviewed my cousin last week, John Cangelosi, and he's the rare doctor that has the entrepreneurial spirit and that education side along with the medical side. So I'm going to put words in your mouth right now, but I'm
Yes.
going to ask you about the most incredible collaboration you ever had in your life, and I'm going to answer it for you, your
I
wife.
already knew. I paused for a second. I was like, oh my gosh, what's she? Okay.
I'm going to put words in your mouth. So I met your wife, and what I
Yes.
found so interesting, and we had wanted her to join us today because I think it's so interesting to see really talented, smart couples together and the way that they
Thank you.
support each other. Like I've supported my baby Rob.
No,
But,
and I'm married up. I'm
yes.
fully. I'm
But
100%.
she's-
I'm married up.
But she's an educator, and I thought it was so fascinating to talk to her pre-COVID about just the journey. I can't imagine her journey through COVID with how, and then you've taken on this as one of your biggest outreaches for the community is to help kids who have been bullied. And tell us about your journey together, your experience with education. Have you been able to pull these sports guys in with you?
So her journey through COVID has been interesting because every day there's some kind of a Zoom call or some sort of a video conference call. It might not be Zoom, but we all know what Zoom is now as a result of COVID, right? I mean, I never heard of Zoom in
I
my
didn't even know.
life
Yes.
until COVID,
Right.
right? And now they're $1 billion company.
And that was the stock we missed. We missed that one there.
Certainly. But learning and planning and trying new things and rolling out new programs, I hear portions of the conversation, and then we talk about what they're doing and watching school districts across the state and learning which age groups are likely to go back to school first, which ones are going to just possibly continue to learn from home, and seeing it live, the touch, test, and then apply, or touch, test, and pivot to a different way of doing things is what the schools are all going through. And in talking with her, I'm like, okay, so it's like and this is my opinion because I'm not in education, but so everybody is in year one of this new existence. There is no seniority when it comes to knowing how to navigate what schools are going through because they've never had to go through it. Not in our modern era.
And not on such a large basis. Some homeschooling, you've got a family that does it, but not all of a sudden the entire world goes, we're homeschool. That's
Sure.
it. From elementary all the way through college.
Absolutely. Trying to figure out what kinds of supplies that families need in order for their kids to be able to participate in the education that's being provided. Households that have 3 and 4 kids that don't have 3 and 4 computers.
Yes.
Right?
It didn't even occur to me.
Some don't even have any computers, or they have
Yes.
a parent's computer, then the parent uses it for work. So where does that push them down the line?
Sure.
And the hierarchy of who gets to learn and who doesn't get to learn.
Sure. Extending work days, because now you're working at home when oftentimes in some professions, when you got home, your work day was done. But now you're working from home, so it's kind of like, well, your office is always right there. I can always do one more thing, or I was not as efficient between 8 and 5 as I normally would be because I'm also, dealing with children in the house. And so what do I do now? That means I work till 8. That means I work till 9. So there's a lot of change that is happening in households across America as a result of being quarantined, and I'm not complaining about the quarantine. There's a lot of great things that happened as a result of quarantine, family dinners,
Yes.
family
My
breakfasts.
favorite.
No, it's
Family
crazy.
lunches.
Yes.
So we're all how many of us are burning propane on our outside?
Oh, our
grills?
barbecue
Lots of
grill.
grilling,
Lots
yes.
of grilling.
Right. Lots and getting to know, your spouse more, because
Oh, yeah.
it's like, oh, wait a minute, I only used to see you for 4 hours a day max. Okay.
And then the cuddling time. But other than that, I mean, it's 24/7 on.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
escape.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, you eat that? I didn't know you ate that. Wait, when did you start? Wait, all those. It's like starting to date over again, right?
Isn't it glorious?
Yes, yeah.
9 times out of 10 it is. There was that one time Danae goes, hey, aren't the planes flying, Rob? Because I used to fly 150 days a year, sometimes 200 a year. She goes, you can take a plane somewhere, I'm sure, and I know that the airfares are cheap. Can you just go somewhere? I said, yeah, no problem. I'll get right on it.
But you were traveling places, speaking of travel, talking about bullying around the country. How
Yes.
did that evolve from your journey to become a national spokesperson?
So I have been blessed to partner with Crime Stoppers, and as a part of my public platform where I share information, and this topic through Crime Stoppers happens to be about bullying, cyberbullying to be more specific. And the topic of cyberbullying I started on before I started my partnership with Crime Stoppers by utilizing social media. Every week I would post a legal topic, and I would give my take on what that topic was, and people liked my delivery, my personality was some people were
Your
drawn
laugh.
to. I stole it from Eddie Murphy. I started practicing at an early age, and it never left me. So from doing that, I started getting requests to travel to different cities and speak with their news stations and whether it's telephonic interview or going down into the studio and doing an interview just to talk about what the community was going through and give parents some tools for how to address those situations. And so that's how the whole Crime Stoppers and cyberbullying platform and the traveling unfolded. From there, I was hoping to go down and give a speech in Florida. I mean, if you've been to Florida before, why not Florida, right? It's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Florida, yeah, we'll be there. We'll come watch you.
Right. And then COVID derailed that plan, and so that opportunity, I think they're going to do another function in Tennessee, I believe, next year instead. So, anywhere I can share information, it's not necessarily limited to cyberbullying. Sometimes we talk about there's so many different topics. Whatever the most current legal topic is or community impact topic is, if we're knowledgeable about it, then I'll go out and I'll share information. I use my platform to give people things
I
that
love
they might not
Well,
otherwise know.
The quote that I'm most inspired by, you say, be quick to listen and slow to speak. Tell us about that philosophy.
So I think that people tend to want to overtalk one another, want to show that they have something to contribute before they really know what the conversation is about, what the information that's being shared is really about, and giving a person an opportunity to fully express. You listen, you process, and then you respond intelligibly. That is what that's about. And so you never want to just jump right in and start giving a person a reason why their opinion is wrong, or while show how intelligent you are. You're really not, in my opinion, showing how intelligent you are until you've processed what is in front of you. And that's really all it's about, is just slowing down to listen to persons. You have two of these and one of these, meaning two ears and one mouth, and I think it's for a reason. You should listen twice as much before you open your mouth and share your opinion.
Process it before you speak.
Right.
Pause before you speak. Tough lessons I've had to learn as I've gotten older, but I still try to learn that every day. And being married too. Sometimes you've got to process because men's and women's brains think and process things differently.
Absolutely.
And well, the topic we've got going on right now, Danae.
Yes, and in our city, I have to say that I have so much pride for Houston. We are such a diverse city, and I feel like given what's been happening in our country and the horrible death of George Floyd, the way that our entire community and the leadership of our community, Mayor Turner, Chief Acevedo, the sheriff, came together to lead these quiet protests where we could really reach out and connect with the community. And I said to you today when we met, I said, I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing, but my heart's authentic and I want to connect with people in the community of all colors and races and religions. And I wanted to talk to you about that. I mean, you are an African American man
Yes.
living in this community. I have many friends who are African American. I've talked to them about the way their journey has been so different than my journey as a white woman.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about that because I trust you and I value you, and I want to know what you want to share authentically from your heart.
Well, and thank you for the opportunity to do that. Where I'm at. So I'll share from my perspective, and I know that a majority of my friends and colleagues and persons who are similarly situated, being African American, have similar experiences. Where I'm at with this topic is, I think that people need to be willing to just listen to the issue that is being presented. And you commented on the response from the city of Houston. And I have to applaud the city of Houston and our police chief as well, because what he did was very unique. And I've seen a couple of different police officers around the country that have taken the same position, and it was to say, I hear you. It was to say, let's talk and not deny that there's an issue here, as opposed to closing the ears and the mind and saying everything's fine. And I give you a metaphor earlier before we started our show about being an alcoholic. And I am not an alcoholic. Let's make that part clear. But if a person is deemed to be an alcoholic by all the people around them, yet they are constantly saying they don't have a drinking problem, that person will not want to seek help. And part of trying to seek help is recognizing there's a problem. Like the Me Too movement, for example. When you have a few women that were treated, mishandled in a certain way, until the population, the larger population, was forced to recognize that and say, okay, we're listening now. We hear you now. That Me Too movement momentum would have never developed. It would have always remained oppressed, swept under the rug, or we would just turn our back and ignore it. But the fact that people said, okay, we hear you, what's the issue? Then people could come forward with their stories and give room for change. So the first thing is to stop being in denial that there's a problem. I don't know one person of color, and I'm going to say of color because it is not simply an African American situation. All of our experiences are different and unique, but persons of color all have stories that they should be able to share and say, this is what happened based on my color. This is what happened based on my sex. This is what happened, based on my age. We have laws that are designed to protect people for a reason, because we recognized that there was disproportionate treatment of certain persons in this in this world, not just in the United States, but in this world. So if I told, let's say, people in the workforce who are above 80 years old, and I talked to them and said, "What are your fears? What are your concerns?" They would probably have common stories. I fear, possibly being passed over because of my age, that they think I'm only going to work for so many years. I fear being terminated because I make too much money. They can hire somebody much younger who they think can do my job but can't do it as well. There's going to be some common stories there,
Yes.
which are real stories, right? They're real concerns based on the experiences of persons of a certain age group. So when I talk to persons of that age group, and that common story is there's no denying it. But if I change the topic and I said, but now let's make it an African American who is experiencing A, B, C, and D, then you get pushback from some people, not everybody, but some people will push back and say, "Oh, that's not real. That's in your mind. That ended a long time ago. That's not me. That's not you." And the real thing to do is listen. Listen, open your mind, try and understand. And you're married. When you have a situation where your wife is upset, you might not understand, and you might totally disagree with why she's upset. But if you listen long enough, you might figure out how to make her situation not so vexing. How to
I listen. I've learned to say, I'm listening to you. I'm processing it instead of
Well, they
get
say-
over it or this or that. And that's the whole. There's a process involved because I don't see the world through my eyes, how you see the world through your eyes, or how people see you. Also, it's unfortunate that that's how it is,
Right.
and we need to work on that. And your perspective is different, and that's what we need to understand. We live in a city that's the most diverse city in the United States of America, Houston.
Yes.
We are the hodgepodge. We're the mixing of the whole world in our city, and we had 70,000 people come to that march, and I honestly didn't think it would go that well, and it went phenomenal. And everybody gave everybody a chance to listen and work through it and see their perspective, and then come home and digest it, and then see where we can go to try to work together on these things.
Right. It is a process, and it's not a quick fix. It's not something that we can just say tomorrow we're all going to be treated equally and the same. It is a process, putting steps in place to make that happen, like peaceful dialect, like opening our ears and our hearts to recognize that we're human beings all collectively. We all went and hid in our houses when COVID hit.
Yes.
It wasn't Black America hiding, Spanish America hiding. Italy hid, Brazil hid, United States hid, Russians hid. We all hid the same way. We all had the same fears. We all have the same. So we have that. There's so many things that we have that's in common. That's right in front of us. And the things that divide us are the failure to recognize sometimes that we're all the same, right?
And so much of our pain is from fear or not being heard. And I know when we've gone through therapy, one of our, and it's helped so much, one of the things they say with a healthy marriage is autonomy with a connection. And part of connection is feeling that your partner will take influence from you.
Right.
And I think that's what, as a country, we're saying. Allow me to influence you from my experience, or allow
From my perspective.
Take this and absorb it. And Randy Rubenstein, one of our podcast guests, she does mastermind parenting. She says when your child comes to you with a problem, you repeat what you heard and you let them know that you hear them. You don't come back and say, "Oh, but look at how good you have it otherwise," and that doesn't matter. And I think that's what the African American community is saying. Let's hear this. Let's not come back with, "But, well,
Yeah.
it's better." It still hurts. It's still painful. Let's sit with it. Brene Brown says that when you go through a painful situation, you have to sit with it, feel it, and then push through it. And that's what we're asked to do as a country this week and here forward, I think.
I think that's absolutely correct. And part of it starts with how we, because I'm going to tie this back to education.
Yes.
What are we teaching to the generations that are following? Because if you go to an elementary school or a preschool and you watch those kids play, they all play together. They don't have a Chinese section. They don't have a Mexican section and an African American section and a white section. Not in any school that I've seen. I mean, maybe somewhere in some strange country they've got that system figured out, but not here. They all play together, and that's their nature. Okay, so nature versus nurture kind of conversation. What are we teaching to that generation that follows? So I think those kinds of lessons, teaching the right thing to our children, like when we tell them don't smoke, don't drink, don't do drugs, and love one another. I mean, those kinds of things, those processes, and there's so many. This is such a topic that can.
We could spend days on this.
Right. But I think that, I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective on it, my own experiences on it. Through my life, I could write a book. But that is not, in itself going to change the world. We just need some understanding right now. That's where I'm at.
Well, thank you for sharing
Sure.
your journey, your commitment to our community, and the way that you've reached out to children. And then you also lead through what you're doing with your business and the roles you take. And I read about your charity. We didn't even get to talk about that. As One Foundation for sickle cell anemia, or sickle cell in
Yes.
general. Do you want to touch on that real quick as a parting statement?
I do. So the As One Foundation was started by the DeVard Darling, who lost his twin brother to sickle cell. And so his brother passed away after not having proper hydration while playing football at Florida State University. And not knowing that he had the trait, he didn't have proper hydration, and he was denied proper hydration. And so his brother, who then became an NFL football player, which was their twin dream, created the As One Foundation. We go out, we raise money, we share testing kits and information with school districts, colleges, cities, states, you name it. The NFL is one of our sponsors as well. Get behind us. The city of Houston is going to be becoming more involved with us as well. And that's what we do. I also want to say they're watching us today in China. Joe Young, who is a professional basketball player and a Houston native, and he played in the NBA, now he's playing in China, and his collective group are sharing today's stream, watching, because they're going through a lot of the same things that we are. And find all these topics to be very interesting. So we have to say hello to our friends in China.
Hi, yes. We miss being able to go to Asia. So much of our business is there. So much of our clients, our friends.
Hong Kong, we would go 3 or 4 times a year. We'd go to mainland once
wow.
a year. And in the fall, we couldn't go because of the protests. And then in spring, we couldn't go because of COVID this year. And it's a shame. I enjoy it so much. Their culture is fantastic. Such good people. And the government is probably not so good, but we don't have time to get into all of that. But the people I met were wonderful people. And I've been going
trustworthy.
I've been going for 10 years. So the same
loyal,
convention every 3 times a year. The same people would come back. And we didn't speak the language well to each other, but they would bring me gifts and I would bring them gifts and we would do business. And it was I loved it. I love.
You would speak the language in your actions.
In our actions,
Right.
in our expressions.
Right.
And we learned some fun phrases back and forth, and it was good. I mean, I miss it. I miss it financially, bottom line. I mean, I'm a businessman.
Sure.
But I miss the relationships and the great meals. Fun people that go to just have a long meal. I really miss Asia. I really do.
I have not yet been, but it's on my list of places to visit. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your commitment to Crime Stoppers as a Crime Stoppers board member and a safe school advocate. I appreciate what you do to help these kids. I too believe that there's so many things in the world that need to be corrected and altered in our journey, but I've chosen to focus on the kids because I feel like if we can help them grow up in a safe, nurturing, healthy environment, that's what truly will change our future of our country. And I'm so appreciative of what you do with Crime Stoppers. And I just recommend everyone to follow your philosophy. Be quick to listen and slow to speak.
Well, I had a great time. You guys are always great to come and sit with, and I can't wait to see what happens with your platform as you grow. And really quick teaser, I have something fun coming up with American Airlines, and that's all I can say about it.
Okay, stay tuned.
But stay tuned. And
follow Jamie on Instagram. Jamie Speaks, is that?
Jamie K Speaks on Instagram and on Facebook.
And I look forward to getting on planes again. And
American Airlines.
American. You got it.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week at 10 o'clock. And also check us out on Mondays at 1 for another Facebook Live.